you a mother wondering how to stay present in the mundane when you're so eager for a less exhausting season yet to come? Well, we're talking about this today on the GraceLaced podcast. I'm your host, Ruth Jo Simons, and today I'm joined by my friend, author, podcaster, and encourager, Sally Clarkson. Whether you're a mom or someone learning to press into the callings God has for you in another arena, today's conversation will be one you won't want to miss. So grab your strong cup of tea and join us. Well, my dear friend, Sally Clarkson is here today. Sally, thank you so much for joining me. I feel like this is the conversation I wish we could have over a cup of tea in your kitchen. And one of these days, I'm going to go visit you and we're going to do that. But friend, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, what a privilege. I am just so thrilled to be with you. I see you so often come across my screen, and I think, Ruth and I need to get together. We're both in Colorado sometimes.
Yes,
On occasion,
sometimes.
we're home. Yeah.
We've got this
So this
huge
is a real gift.
It is. And we have this huge mountain range between us, but we are so like-hearted. And for so many years, really, you are that person that's spoken into my life since the little years of
Mm,
child rearing. And I think about
mm.
all the ways in which I nod my head when you share about motherhood and intentionality at home. And so for any listener who might be joining us today and say, "Oh, who is this Sally Clarkson?" Please do a quick little introduction of anyone who may not be familiar with your heart and your ministry and your desires. With your words, please just introduce yourself a little.
I shall. And I was thinking, I think we met around 15 years ago
I think
at
so. Yeah.
at a conference. Well, I'm Sally Clarkson. I This will tell you a little bit about if I'm neurotic or not, but I have been married 42 years, and we have moved 24 times, 9 times internationally.
Oh my goodness.
So, which says that Clay and I are extremely idealistic. We always have been. I have 4 adult children who I home educated, and 3 out of 4 of them are in the UK right now. 2 of them
Wow.
finished their PhDs in the past couple of years and are teaching there. And then my daughter Sarah has my only 4 grandchildren. And
Oh,
she also is living there with her husband, who they're living in a dream Anne of Green Gables old Victorian
oh
house.
my goodness.
And so between them, and then I have another son, Nathan, who is in California working in the film industry, doing real well and having fun with his wife, Kelia. So I spend as much time as I can between those 2 places, while sometimes being home as well. But I, uh, I love words. I love ministry. I've been writing books and doing conferences and podcasts and all the things you do for
Well, how
so
many
many
books have
years.
you written? You've written a lot of books, a lot of
I
wonderful
think
books.
31,
Oh my
31.
goodness.
But doesn't it make you tired? We both
Oh,
understand each other's life.
no, but I'm
Uh,
so grateful that you've done that work over the years for sure.
well, I think the thing, we have many things in common, but I think we both love the Lord with all our heart, and we love these women that we have the privilege of encouraging and inspiring and helping and leading, because I think I was a kind of a pioneer in what I do now.
Hmm.
My first child is turning 40 in May, and I think, whose child is she? That can't be my child. But I look back and I think I just was so longing for someone to come along beside me and tell me to keep going
Yeah.
and to trust the Lord, that it mattered, that
Yes.
we're building legacies that will last for eternity. And so I think you and I keep going because we do love people. We love the Lord, and we keep having one more quiet time, and then you have more to say.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and Sally, you've been successful to do that very work of encouragement. You absolutely have. And I
Mm.
long to be a woman who raises adult children. You're 20 years ahead of me in that, and still not coasting and still pouring into it, still choosing to stay present, still mentoring, still discipling. And so thank you for being such a role model in that. And, you were the top of my list for today's conversation because,
Mm,
this whole season is about coming around this topic that I've written about in Now and Not Yet. The subtitle to the book is Pressing In When You're Waiting, Wanting, and Restless for More. And the whole premise of this message has been when the right now circumstances don't show the fruit, or when we don't feel like where we want to be,
right.
or when we're kind of in between seasons, what do we do to press in when we're not exactly where we want to be? And I think about this season that I'm beginning, Sally, that I feel like, oh my goodness, we could have multiple hours in conversation about this because I'm like, could somebody tell me what we're supposed to do when our whole purpose is shifting at home? These children are launching, our parents are aging. My
Right.
body is changing. What people need from me is different. The way my brain thinks feels different. Um,
Right.
Maybe perimenopause is happening soon. I'm not sure, but I
Uh,
feel a little off kilter and wondering, what do I do um, when I'm in between seasons and I can't see the fruit of all? Maybe I will one day be a grandma, but right now I'm kind of going, I'm sending my kids out into the world, and um, how do I trust the Lord with all that they will become because I can't quite see all the fruit yet? And so I want to hear you share a little bit with our audience about what that has looked like for you, because I feel like you're modeling that really well. You have seen some of the fruit of it, but the reality is no story is complete. And so you're probably living in some version of a lot of now wonderful nows and some not so wonderful nows and some not yets that are to come that you can believe the Lord for, but maybe is not fully recognized in your own life and your family's life. And so share with us some of what that might mean to you right now.
well, gosh, we could have hours and hours of talking about this. I think, I wish I had known earlier. I just didn't understand the whole perspective of world and history and everything. But we are living in such a chaotic time, and yet God is still in
Yes.
control. And I think I'm such a, I love hope and inspiration, and we can do this. And then I was never trained to do this much housework. I didn't know that my children would eat every day, 3 times a
Right?
day, and want relatively clean clothes, and that I would have to train them. And I'm an idealist who had never been taught how to count the cost.
Mm,
And I wish, as I look back, uh, people have gone through what we are going through now for generations,
y-
for such a long time.
yes.
And God is so familiar. It says He is mindful that we are but dust. And
Hmm.
so when I fail or I feel like I'm exhausted, I can't make it anymore, or I write in my journal. I told my children I'm going to burn my journals because they're mainly me lamenting before God. God, what is going on here? Um, but I wish I had just relaxed more. I wish
Mm,
I had said, other people have gone through this. This will turn out okay. God is faithful.
yes.
And so I think one of the things I learned early, I can remember I was walking on this dusty road in Texas. We had a couple of 100 acres there with my mother in law, which was interesting. And so I would go walking every day. And I remember at one point, I thought, I just need to plant a flag and say, from this point on, I will believe that God is good. I will believe in
Mm,
His faithfulness. I will not worry and stress about everything that comes along. But this is my flag planting moment. And so
mm,
I wrote about it, and I decided that it was so much better for me just to rest in the Lord and wait patiently for Him. And there's a psalm that talks about like a weaned child
hmm.
who rests against his mother's breast. And I had 3 children, 3 miscarriages. And then at
Mm.
42, I had Nathan, my out of the box child, had said, Mommy, I think you need to have another little girl. And I said, Well, honey, I've had 3 miscarriages, and Mommy's getting just a little bit older. And that was 28 years ago. And
Wow.
so I did get pregnant. She did,
Wow.
she came. And she used to, we had this home in Colorado at that time. And we didn't know what to do. We were building it. We didn't know what to do with this one little hole in the wall. And so we built a little closet. We would just open the door and we put her toys there. We put her Beanie Babies there. We put
Hmm.
all these toys there. And she would just hide in this secret place. And when I look back on this, it was became a picture to me of, okay, I am hidden in
Hmm.
the secret place of God. He is with me. I can run to this little closet in my mind. I can trust him, and he will take care of me like I take care of Joy. It was just for me a moment of a
What a
picture that I
picture.
needed. Yeah, and
And
I
what's
would,
amazing about that picture, Sally, is that it's it's always available. His presence and his
yeah,
comfort and the safety of his care is available to us right now. I think one of the things that we resist in pressing in right now is that we think somehow we have to get our act together or have the perfect solution for the kind of family we want to raise, or what our 5 year or 10 year plan is for our family or for ourselves, and have a career trajectory in order to experience the fruit or the blessing of
right.
becoming who we want to be when God says, come right now, because it's not about
Hmm.
where you're going. It's about what I have for you in my presence now. And I love that picture
Right.
of that little nook you created for Joy because it's like that is the safety of his presence that is always welcoming, is always an invitation, even now before we stop feeling, nutty or crazy or
Hmm.
exhausted. We can go to him right now. What are some things that you had to tell yourself when you were in that child rearing season? What were some ways I hear you when you say you went on a walk and you put that flag down and said, this is a moment where I'm just going to proclaim to the Lord, I'm done with this kind of worry and stress. But on a day-to-day
Hmm.
level, when you're, you know, doing the laundry again and when you're retraining hearts again, even though you said the same thing yesterday or 20 minutes ago,
Hmm.
how do you embrace the weariness of doing it now again and again when you want to see the result of obedient children, or when you want to see the result of, you know, that child getting on the other side of having these tantrums or frustrations? What do you
Hmm.
tell yourself right in the moment?
I think one of the, at least for me, one of the hardest times is when they're all little.
Mm-hmm.
Because you really, I was untrained, had never changed a diaper, and I was so long without sleep that I thought I was dying of some dread disease, and people were going to feel sorry for me someday. I thought I must be dying. But when I look back now, I think that, I guess if I said nothing else today, this is what I would want to say: unconditional love, and taking the time to accept your children, to love their personality, to accept them in their context, to make special moments. You don't have to have a perfect house. No one ever will. Where there are no oxen, the stall is clean. So that means where there are many oxen, and I had many oxen in my house all the time, the stalls weren't always clean. And the reason I say that is because I think that we're in such a performative society as Americans,
Mm-hmm.
and we have this really dumb, I would say stupid illusion of what things we have to do to build into our children's
Right.
lives.
Right.
And I look back and it was the rhythms, and it was the talking
Mm-hmm.
at the dinner table every night, and it was kissing them
Exactly.
on the head. And
That's what
I
it is
think what
for
I
us too.
didn't,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And we just need love, acceptance, the organic, beautiful life that you can build in a home. And I think that if I could, you know, look back and say to my friends, my children were going to do fine intellectually because I
Mm-hmm.
was so neurotic about reading to them and talking with them and teaching them scripture. They'll be fine, and they're going to get more than they could ever have gotten from other places. But the thing I didn't understand as much is that our children are entering into, no matter what you have done with them, into a chaotic world,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of temptation, there's a lot of darkness, there are a lot
Mm-hmm.
of difficulties. And I wish I had just been at ease and said, today, the most important thing is that I love God and love my people
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to, at midnight when my teenagers want to talk to me,
Yes.
I'm going to make time for it because I want them to trust me. I want them to
Yeah.
come to me forever. And then, of course, by 5:30 or 6 the next morning, my new little baby was up saying, "Mommy, do you want to
Right?
play with me?" You know, and I think that yes, it is exhausting, and you will be worn. It's like the little Velveteen Rabbit. You're going to be bald and old by the time it's all over. But I think that you're the same way. I am. My children are my best friends.
For
If
sure.
there's
You've,
anyone I want to spend time with now, we share the same values, the same food preferences, the same books we all read, and if you love well and serve well and give yourself grace along the way, you will be so deeply amazed at the soul satisfaction that comes. It's not doing everything, getting everything
yeah.
done. It's loving well and making time for relationships.
If you're a parent like me, you hope that your children will grow up to develop an unshakable faith, to follow Jesus and live out his call on their lives in a way that brings glory to God. But you also know that our kids live in a world that can be challenging to follow Christ faithfully, which is why Summit Ministries is such a great resource. Here's how one mom described her kids' experience. I'm not capable of teaching my kids all the things they learn at Summit. I homeschool them and we read a lot of great books together, but nothing compares to what they've internalized after attending Summit. Summit takes the best of the best speakers and they plan each session in such a way that the kids can get the most out of it. That means having downtime, having fun activities, good food, thoughtful dialogue, access to speakers, staff connection, all of it. I'm sending 3 of the Simon's Man Cubs to Summit as soon as our schedule allows, hopefully next summer, and I'm so excited for them. If you have a child between the ages of 16 and 22, send them to a 2-week Summit experience in Colorado or Georgia this summer. Learn more and register at summit.org/GraceLaced and save $200 off the cost with the code RUTH24. That's RUTH 24. So, what I'm hearing you say is one way we can press into our right now. And I think, honestly, this is such a practical insight for mothers, but for anyone who's not a mother listening in, I think this is a practical tip for even pressing in right now is how can I intentionally serve and build into the very people right around me right now, because those relationships will form me and will be part of what will actually last. Not all the things that I'm stressing about, not all the ways in which I want to make things perfect, but it's the relationships. It's the taking the time for things that are eternal and that matter.
Hmm.
That's what we can press into. That might be the people that are in your life in your community group. That might be your roommates, that might be the students that you teach at school, but whoever it is that God's given you. And for mamas, that's those children who don't want to go to bed at night and that you have a big,
Right.
long bedtime routine with. But the reality is when we say, okay, rather than what's the ideal place that I want to be and why am I not getting there faster, to say, okay,
Hmm.
my very next thing that I can do is to look them in the eye, to have a real conversation, to pull that little one onto my lap, to call that person that's hurting.
Right.
Very next step can be an intentional move towards building something eternal and not so temporary.
Well, I think too. I was reading the other day, and I was thinking about this in my quiet time. It was an article about how when you become older, you become more humble because you realize how many mistakes you're going to make in life.
So
Um,
true.
you
So true.
you become gentler because you needed someone to be gentle with you when you made your mistakes.
Hmm.
You become more patient because you realize that somehow you stay alive through the worst nightmares that you thought you couldn't go through, but you kept taking one more step, and then
Yeah.
you got there. And I was thinking, I lived in Oxford for the past 4 years, and I mentored PhD students, so it was really a fun job.
Hmm.
And it was so good for me because I learned to really look at people's context. what country were they from? What had they
Mm-hmm.
been through wars?
Mm-hmm.
Did they have good situations or not? What were their needs? And I think I realized that a part of getting older, an advantage to it, is that you're not as critical of yourself
Hmm.
or of other people. You realize that life is a journey and it's a constant learning process, and that every person that comes into your life, and I enjoyed this job so much, but every person who comes into your life uh, has too high of expectations for themselves, will be disappointed in themselves. We all have what's it, the syndrome, when you think that, I can't think of it right now, when you think, oh, people are going to discover who I really am and that I'm not enough. Um, and
I think we all wrestle with that.
Yeah, and I think it was such a good place for me to remember that we aren't about performance, we're about faithfulness,
Yeah.
and love. And I know that may seem funny for me to keep repeating that, but as I look at the people today that I've kind of traveled through over all these years and over all these moves, I realize that it's just basic old-fashioned love, acceptance, affirmation, perseverance, keeping going. And then you will look back and go, wow, I'm a changed person. A part of the purpose of my life wasn't accomplishing everything I thought I was going to accomplish, but a part of it was that I needed some work in my own life. I needed perspective. I needed
Yes.
uh, to see the beauty of creation and enjoy it. I needed to enjoy the little baby patting my chest when I was nursing them, or the teenager who said, "Will you give me a back scratch? I've really got to tell you some secrets."
I
Um,
love that.
and so it's enjoying the moment. One time, my daughter Sarah said to me, "You know, Mama, you really should catch yourself right before you blow, because you always feel worse about it when you blow than we do."
Oh my
And she said, "If
goodness.
you could just catch yourself before you do that." It's those times when you go into the kitchen and there's one more dish, and all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden that dish becomes the straw that breaks your back. And
Right.
she said, "We love you, Mama, and we know you'll be normal again, but just catch yourself before you blow." And I thought that is the best advice,
Right.
because we're all going to hit our limits. We're all going to have these down days, but
Yeah. And I think it's
it
part
did
of embracing our weakness, right? I mean, I think
right.
is rather than succumbing to this idea and maybe what we see on social media so much that everybody is becoming their most amazing, strong self where they don't need to have weaknesses. And what I think what you're saying, Sally, from just a view further ahead of where I'm at is the reminder that it's all the embracing of those weaknesses and the little moments that you think don't matter that actually built a really full and rich life. In one of the
Mhm.
chapters throughout this book, I keep going back to what it means that this moment matters, what it means that someday is made up of thousands of right nows, which I know
Of
you
little moments.
relate to, right?
Mhm.
And in one of the chapters, it's called God's callings are his enablings.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
I, for a long time, I attributed that phrase to Spurgeon, but I couldn't find the original source to it. I don't claim it fully. I don't know where I picked it up, but God's callings are his enablings. And I write, do you find yourself measuring your ability to step into your callings with metrics like popularity, approval, resources, and natural giftedness? I remember I used to think, I'm not a natural mama. I don't want to, I don't know how to change diapers, or I don't have a nurturing spirit about me. I used to say that. I always said, I'm an unlikely mama. I write, are you tempted to feel called when your strengths are on display and not called when it's your weaknesses instead? And I
It's a
think
great line.
for us, it's an opportunity for us to recognize that sometimes we get so confused and we think that we're not living our purposes in life because what's on display is the hard stuff. And we go, wait, I don't feel like I feel like I'm more called to doing what I'm really good at. Why do I have to do all these things that are difficult or causing me to
Mhm.
have to really be weak and cry out to the Lord? But the very fact, Sally, that you have something to share now to younger mamas is because in weakness you cried out to the Lord, is because there was a time. You're not describing um, an entire motherhood journey where at every turn you said, I was meant for this moment and I have all the patience in the world for this. You're
Nope, nope,
describing a
nope.
motherhood journey where you said, I had an honest conversation with the Lord as I was walking on my acreage and going, Lord, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I have the patience or the confidence or the courage. And I don't know what to do with that one child that I don't even know what to say to him or her. And we're
Hmm.
literally asking the questions, Lord, it me? Really? Me? I'm supposed to be doing this?
You chose me.
And this could be for so many of us who are, any of our listeners who are listening in, that could apply in their jobs or in their ministry or in the new location the Lord has sent them. Maybe they've relocated and
Hmm.
suddenly going, why am I in this community? Why me? And it's so easy to say, feel tempted to feel called when your strengths are on display and not so called when it's your weaknesses instead. And if you're willing, Sally, I'd love to know if because sometimes when I look at you, I think, well, she kind of busted through all those weak points in her life and she's only thriving in strength right now. Like there's just, I mean, how could you possibly have learned all those lessons and still struggle with any kind of weaknesses or longings? And sometimes weaknesses isn't even that there's a thing that's like a hindrance, but even like an unfulfilled longing. So if you're willing, I'd
Right.
love to know, is there a weakness even now after all these years of
Oh
God
my
strengthening you?
goodness, yes.
Or is there a longing that's not yet fulfilled that you can share with us that
Hmm.
would help us know that like this is not an arrival point? It's not like, oh, in your 20s and 30s or even in your 40s, you're working through these things and suddenly you're going to arrive and voila,
Right.
like you don't have a weakness or a longing anymore. How do you personally, even now with a successful and wonderful adult children who want to have conversations with you, who you get to see and be a part of their lives and do life together and read the same books, even with all those wonderful things, what is a not yet moment or circumstance that you are willing to share with us?
I think that all of us, until we pass, we're going to have unfulfilled longings because this
Yeah.
isn't the place where we're going to have all of our needs met.
Amen.
And I think that another illusion that people have is that motherhood or parenting or family will ever be over.
Yes.
I think
Totally.
right now,
I say that too.
um, yeah, I mean, it's just I'm talking to my kids all the time. They don't live here. They live overseas in California, but I'm praying, demanding before the throne of God that He give them jobs.
Mm,
My children are all, several of them are looking for jobs. Several,
mm,
when you wait for your children's spouses, what is that going to be like? And
yes.
are they going to have a healthy baby? It's just as bad as when you were wondering if
Yes.
your babies were going to be healthy.
Mm,
Life has these cycles. And I think again, another thing that I think for women is we can be so lonely. We can
mm-hmm.
be working so hard and all the different ideals. And one of the things, because I get lonely now in that I have a lot of work to do. I am occupied with my children and my books and my speaking and my traveling. And I am so blessed. I love my life. And also, I think a number of years ago, um, I was really exhausted and I was really doing too many things. And this doctor said to me, "You can die early if you want to." And he said, "You're on the road to dying early."
Wow, that's convicting.
And so I know. And so I thought, oh, and so I kind of pulled away and I started creating pleasure in my life because I was
I
giving out
love
to
that.
so many people,
Yes.
to my friends, my husband, my children, my publishers, my this, my that, and so I started building rhythms in my life of every Saturday morning I would go with a friend or a child downtown near the old Victorian houses. I would have
Mm,
breakfast at a French restaurant. I would go for a long walk in the mountains and in these old Victorian houses. And I just put some things like that into my life. And it's fun for me to see now that other people are modeling it. My hot cup of strong tea. And please do not interrupt me because I need some introverted time every day. and and also, are there any people that you can see on your horizon that when you're with them, they make you feel filled up?
Yeah.
or they understand you, or they make you want to be a better person. Do what you need to do to create rhythms with people who help you keep going. We weren't made to be alone or to bear all this
Amen.
loneliness
Yeah.
or all this stress on our own shoulders by ourselves. And so I think
Am-
planning and thinking how to include pleasure, how to make a group of friends. I just started a new group where I
mhm.
have a couple of people come and we eat all morning. They're the best cooks. I picked well. We eat all
It's the
morning
best
and
way to
then
find
we
friends.
spend, yeah, but then we talk and share where we are in life and we pray for one another and we do fun things together. But I've almost had to start every group I've ever been involved in.
Mm,
But it is worth the investment to take a little break, to not look at your performance,
yeah.
to be with people who accept you as you are. Oh, I've
hmm
got so many weaknesses I didn't tell you about. I'm not an organizer. I'm a visionary, and messes drive me crazy. I mean, there's so many things I could tell you, but I've learned that it's never going to change. I've gotten better at some things, but I'm never going to change. Totally. I'm still the same personality. And just to ask for help or
Yes.
to accept the fact that Clay is much better at organizing
Yes.
than I am. He doesn't spend his life going, "Oh, that's Sally. Oh my gosh, that's Sally." But
Well, and I
accepting the limitations.
absolutely, and I think that sometimes we stay so fixated. I that expression, "We become what we behold," and it's so easy to fix our gaze, and be fixated on all the things that we don't do well and all the ways in which we really just want to be better than that. But the truth is, when I think about your personality and mine as well, if you're a creative, if you're wired to have lots of like you said, a visionary, somebody who's like got big ideas and kind of wants to lead the charge and say, "What about this? This is," I think you're more optimistic and more idealistic than me. I think I wax a little melancholy. And so you're probably more positive and glass half full than I am. But I think we're wired similarly, where we have a vision for what beauty can be and should be. And when you
Mhm,
desire that, you've got to have enough margin to not and you have to have enough margin and inspiration to dream and to think and to do the deep work of saying, okay, what does this really mean and what does this take? Rather than be so overwhelmed all the time by
mhm,
little details and administrative things and constantly fixating on the lack and the
mhm.
limitation and the weaknesses. And so I love that you shared that those are some of your rhythms, because I think, Sally, it's really easy for anyone looking in on your career or mine. It could feel like, oh, well, she raises her children well and she writes a ton of books and she can do a podcast. That is true for both of us, and you might hear those things, but the reality is there are weaknesses that we have to constantly surrender back to the Lord and say, this weakness and this lack and this struggle is not disqualifying me. It just causes me to surrender more and say, hey, God, I'm not perfect. I don't have everything it takes to do everything. I'm going to stop trying to prove that I am. I need you. And this is not my ministry. This is me coming
Mhm.
alongside what you've given me to do. And that's a really good place to be. You know what I mean?
I totally do, but I think we might be more alike than you think, because I think that being an idealist in a chaotic world also means that you're probably going to deal with depression
Yes. That
or
you'll be
or
sad a lot.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah, there will be sad moments. And one of my friends once said to me, "I don't know what to do for you because you're in such a difficult place, but
Mm.
I think I'll give you a massage." So she sent me to a massage, this wonderful place. And the truth be told, I felt more happy after I'd had my massage. No one had settled anything, nothing was changed. But again, that whole point of putting it aside, I call it the file drawer of heaven, leaving your burdens in the
Mm.
file drawer of
Hmm.
heaven,
Hmm.
closing it and saying, "I can't deal with this right now, but I think I'll go have a massage." Now, I'm not saying I probably couldn't have afforded a massage at that time because I had children who needed cars and they were in
Yes.
college and
Yeah.
all the other stuff. But my friend took care of my needs and, sometimes, just a whole night of sleep.
Yeah.
Sometimes if somebody brings you a meal, there's so many things that we can do to help one another in this very demanding life. I love idealists, and we all need people to come around us, and we need to come
Mm-hmm.
around other people. One last thing. I think too that I have more compassion on women now because of all my failures,
Mm-hmm.
because of all the seasons that God took me through faithfully, because my
Mm-hmm.
teenager hormones,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
little children attitudes. And
Mm-hmm.
a part of the purpose of us waiting or walking one more step through it is that
Mm-hmm.
in the end, we are much more likely to be loving, to be accepting, to be affirming to other people, to
Amen.
appreciate the wonderful
Yeah.
grace of God. And so part of what you are in right now, all of us, we're still in a training and a sanctifying process so that we can actually spend more time on the attributes that matter and not
Yes.
worry about the things that we can't control.
And I think the theme of this conversation is ultimately God is faithful in every season. And here, we're two women who are not in the exact same season right now, but we can testify he was faithful then, he is faithful now, and he'll be faithful in the days to come, whatever the circumstance. Even for some who might think, oh, well, Ruth has arrived at the place I want to be, or Sally has arrived at the place I want to be. But we're testifying that even here, even where it feels like we're on the other side of a certain set of circumstances, we still recognize that there are longings and weaknesses that will
Right.
cause us to surrender and say, Lord, you've got to take care of this because I am limited. And that's the way you plan for it to be, for me to be a child, for you to be God, and for me to go hide in that little nook you created for me so that I can experience your faithfulness, your comfort, and your care. Sally, thank
Mm.
you so much for sharing these tender and beautiful stories. I hadn't heard some of those, and those beautiful stories that illustrate for us God's care, his kindness, his invitation, and how it really is worth it for us not to sit out our life until things change or to numb ourselves
Mm-mm.
out in those little years. No, it's purposeful, and God has a plan for every season we're in, even the one we're in right this minute. So tell our
So
listeners
true.
how to find you, Sally. I want them to know how to interact with you, find you, and hear about all the projects you have coming up. So let them know
So
where to
sweet.
find you.
It's been lovely being with you. You can find me at sallyclarkson.com, and I have a podcast at at Home with Sally. I always get all my Sally things mixed up. My friends named all these things, and I always get them mixed up.
I
At
love
Home
it.
with Sally. And I just am so privileged to be able to finally get to. We miss seeing each other by so many things that we're doing, but it's so lovely
Mhm.
to hear your voice and just to get this new book. I love your books. I'm so much of a fan of all the things that you've been doing.
Thank you for cheering me on, Sally. And this was such a good conversation from my heart as well. And I know that our listeners will be blessed. Thanks for joining me today.
Right. Bye bye.